Hey everyone, my name's Alex White, and today I want to talk to you about a cool, really simple, really easy channel compressor setting that works on just about everything you could possibly imagine. I use this compression technique on everything I record pretty much without fail. Maybe once every blue moon I decide that maybe it's not quite the right fit for a track, but most of the time this compressor setting works really well. So let's go over to the track that we're working on today. This is just a simple little instrumental piece. It's just an acoustic guitar with some drums, tambourine, and one extra little acoustic guitar playing some melody. So what I'm going to do is, before we get into talking about the actual compression technique, let's have a listen to the track. And I'm just going to play the first two sections, the A and the B section, because you'll hear the dynamic increase. And then I'm going to show you what I do compression-wise. So let's have a little listen. Cool. So that's the track. So first of all, let's just chat a little bit about why you might want to use compression. Well, when you are working on music and a performer comes in and they're playing an acoustic guitar or a piano or they're singing, the dynamic range is huge. The singer might go from almost a whisper sound to a huge shout. And whilst you never want to get rid of dynamic range, the challenge is that usually on playback systems, speakers or headphones, that dynamic range is too much. It just jumps out of the speakers and it's distracting. Some genres get away without having to do this. Jazz and classical are a couple of genres that generally use less compression. But even then, compression is never something that you wish you hadn't used. Most of the time, compression just really helps keep things in focus and keeps the performers in the places that they're supposed to be in the mix as far as you want the music represented. So the compression technique today, as I mentioned, really works beautifully on absolutely everything. It's so simple, and this compression technique is not so much on the side of character compression, but it's more on the side of level control. It's more on the side of just keeping things together, so when you start to turn up your faders to do your rough mix, before maybe you go on to do your mix bus processing, or perhaps you want to do parallel processing, or even your reverbs, and before any of that, this compression is a great start just to add to your tracks to keep things centered, controlled, and focused. So over here on this project, we'll jump over to the mixer, and we've got kick, snare, overhead, tambourine, acoustic, and acoustic 2. And then what they're doing, those tracks are then routing to some buses, and I've got some reverbs over here which we're not going to be using today. And it all finally spills out into the main channel. Again, we're not going to be doing anything on that one today. So let's go and look at the acoustic guitar first, because that is a great place to start. Now, as you can see on the acoustic guitar, if I blow this up a little bit, you can see from the waveform that we've got some, loud bits here. Then it gets a little bit quieter kind of around here. And loud again, quiet again. It seems to have a bit of crescendo towards the end of the track. And also within that, if we zoom in a bit more, you can see that there are some bigger peaks than others. And let's actually just play the acoustic guitar in solo for a second. We're going to come back to this, but listen when I play the track. Listen to the very opening note, and see if you can detect how it goes, whoom, slightly jumps out of the speakers at us before tucking back in. And if you listen, it goes bum 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 bum. That bum 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 bum, that bum is a little bit pokey outy of the mix as well. Pokey outy being an official technical term. Bum bum boom. Okay, that's going to be relevant shortly. But let's talk about actually how I set this compressor up. As I mentioned, I do this when I'm recording. So because I'm using Universal Audio's Luna, and I've been using Universal Audio's gear for ages, they are a company that allow you to use your plugins on a recording chain. So you can set your plugin up how you want, and if you've got the acoustic guitarist in the room, or you're the acoustic guitarist, you can just move that plugin to the record chain and it will actually commit that compression to the acoustic guitar. I haven't done that on this particular track. This is just raw recordings without any compression, just a microphone, just a guitar, or just the drums. So what I do is I ask the player to play a little snippet of whatever they're going to do. And I'll usually ask for something that isn't the loudest section. Contrary to what a lot of the time what you think of when you think of compression, you think, well, I better find out what the loudest bit is. Well, actually, I might find out what the loudest bit is as far as setting the gain for the preamp, but for the compression, I want to know what the average moderately quiet levels are. So something like the verse, nothing aberrant. So if they've got one little section which has a whisper, don't worry about that. Just go for the average verse-ish kind of a level. And on this acoustic guitar, a perfect example of this is this little piece that comes up here. So if I just play it from here. Okay, so you can actually hear, we go from this into something much quieter, gentle pick notes, but then this as well is softer than here. You know, that's quite low, it's got a lot of energy to it. So I know that I'm going to want to average a lot of this out. It's just a bit too much. So I'm going to move to our quiet section and I'm going to zoom in a little. And this is the fun bit. This is the tip, the technique, the thing you can use on just about every sound. I'm going to find a good example of a fairly quiet note. So of course we can see here perhaps this one here, that's pretty quiet. We've got this one here, a couple of louder ones here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to base my compression setting on this note here. And this is what I do. Just play it back like that. Now, sometimes I zoom in and I just make sure that I'm getting the complete note as I want it. And I don't want to include the little attack on that following note there. So I'm just kind of going to do something like that. Cool. Okay, here's the fun compression bit. Go and grab, and I'm going to use an LA2A, go and grab a compressor that's a bit like an LA2A. The reason the LA2A is great is because it's an optical compressor, which basically works by a light that shines on a little panel, and that panel, the brighter the light, the panel is connected to the gain, and the gain lowers the brighter the light gets. So it's a really program dependent, very organic sounding compressor. It works with so many different sources for level control. It's why it's called a leveling amplifier. It really is. It's beautiful for this. So what we do is I play the piece, the tiny little loop of the one note back. And what I'm going to do is set up, first of all, my gain. So I want the gain to, I want the compressor to be exactly the same volume, regardless of whether it's on or off. So that's the first step. So I'm going to switch the compressor on and off and just use this gain control to find the right volume. And that's probably pretty much it. I'm pretty familiar with this compressor because I've used it loads, and I know that somewhere around that 20 mark on the gain volume knob, I know that's usually about unity. When you open it up, it's a bit louder. And it makes sense because you're going to compress something, so you want to recover some of that volume. For now, we're not going to worry about that side of it. We're just going to set the same level. Now, this is the cool bit. I'm going to use this peak reduction, and I'm going to slowly lower it until I start to see that needle just tapping. But I don't want it to tap at all. So I want to just go and find out where it starts to move. And then I'm going to make that peak reduction come back until it's doing nothing again. Just that point, just that spot where it's doing that and then just not doing anything. So let's find that point. Looks to me like it's about 30. That's it. That is the whole cool little compression technique. Because now what's going to happen, and especially if you have a way of allowing the person that's recording the instrument to monitor through this, whether you have a system where you can use low latency monitoring just to monitor the plugins that you have in your chain, or whether you have something like Universal Audio's Gear or Pro Tools do Carbon, which is their system for adding plugins in the chain that you can monitor back. Apogee do a really cool way of handling that as well, where they're plugging kind of at the same time as on the channel, but also in the recording chain. Really cool stuff. Or if you just simply have hardware compressors, then no problem at all. You've got a hardware compressor. Then the artist will play and respond to the compressor, and they will have a much easier time playing their part if their sound in their headphones doesn't sound like it's jumping all over the place. Singers especially struggle with this. You've got a singer with headphones on and they're singing and you've got a nice level, but then they belt a big note out and in their headphones their voice gets too loud, then it all becomes unstuck from the mix. It's a really unpleasant experience. This is another place this compressor technique works so well, because this is a really transparent level control that just makes things sound a little bit cooler. So let's now go back to the start, go back to what we were talking about. You know about that entry note? Okay, let's go and have a listen now to that acoustic guitar. Cool. So I'm going to play a little bit of that intro and I'm going to switch the compressor off and then I'm going to switch it back on again. You will hear the sound get louder when the compressor is off because, of course, we're turning things down. The compressor is lowering the volume automatically for us. So let's have a little listen. Off first and then on. Listen to that. So here's off. Here's on. Listen to that opening note. Listen to the difference of the opening note. And this is where you can start to really focus your hearing on what the compressor is actually doing. So imagine this is our recording session, and I've just recorded some clean acoustic guitar. Now I'm putting on the compressor, and now I've gone to a quiet section, set my compressor level, so I know that I'm not compressing any of the really quiet stuff because I don't want to. I want to leave it as natural as possible at this stage. I just want control. I just want my tracks to sound like they're the best versions of themselves. Listen to that opening note. And especially the boom. So we have that opening note. Da da da. Da da doom. It kind of goes doom. Now with the compressor on. See how it's immediately lessened. It's now not going bam bam boom. It's still got the bass in there. There's still that rounded tone that we like from that note, but it's now just going dum dum dum, and it's controlled. Now this compressor setting, and this is again where you use your ears to decide, is just a fraction too much. So I set it with one of the quiet notes, but on this it's just a little too loud. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it down just a tiny little bit, just like that. So we've set up the compression, we set up the compression, then we've listened, and now I've decided we need just a touch less. And this is the process for getting this super easy compression right. And can you see how little the needle is moving? It's really just tapping away at this level. The acoustic guitar doesn't sound over compressed, it still has dynamics, but now there's control. I'm going to play the whole section again with the compressor off now so you can see the difference. See, just a little bit uncontrolled, just a little bit all over the place. Compressor on. And you can use this compression on absolutely everything. So it's the same process. We'll go over to the drums, and we'll go, first of all, go to the kick drum. So we'll find like, a kick note, which is a fairly average representation of the kick. I mean, you can see, for example, here, if I highlight this section here, you can see how, in fact, let me just take off the warps display. There we go. You can see how this kick drum clearly is louder than this one. This one's a little quieter. This one's quiet. Now, again, I'm not necessarily going for the very quietest note. I just want a decent representation of a lower dynamic. And I would say, I'm probably going to go for this one here. So, okay, so we'll go over, put our compression on. Same situation, I'm going to gain match the compression on that kick drum note first. What's absolutely amazing is even just turning this compressor on, you can actually hear how the tone slightly changes with nothing more than just engaging the compressor. And that is because this compressor emulates the entire signal chain of one of the LA2As, which means you're getting the valves and the transformers, the tonality of those things in this box. So it already adds a really cool sound straight away. But let's now get our gain reduction set up. So here we go. Cool, again, looking for that point where the reduction is not happening at all on one of the quieter notes. And let's move on to the snare. So, same situation. Open this up. Go and find a good sample, a good example of the snare. Just turning all these warps off. We really don't need the warps on. In fact, we just need clips on everything. Okay. Right, let's go and find a nice snare. So the snare in this is mostly a cross stick, I think. It is, in fact, just a cross stick. That one right there, great example. Gain match. Yep, again, tones shifting slightly. Love it. Love that character it brings. Gain reduction. Okay, cool, about there. So now let's go and do the overheads. Hey, business as usual, we just want to find a peak. Now, overheads, the kick and the snare are going to be the loudest things in the overheads, maybe some toms. Cymbals aren't going to have much energy. They might sound loud, but the compressor won't really hear them very well in this particular situation that we're using a compressor for. So we're looking at the kicks and the snares, and let's solo it. All right, so we're looking for kick, because kick's going to have the most energy. Low end sound affects a compressor more, unless, of course, you use one of the filters on a compressor to stop it from hearing the sidechain filter, to stop it from hearing the low end. But we're not doing that with the LA2A. We're just going for a full range compression. Okay, I like this one. Seems like a good place, so we'll go and add in our LA2A level match. A little bit quieter, I think. Cool, about there. Now the tambourine, I think in this case, on this one, the tambourine largely is the same volume, so this one's a good example of a tambourine. So let's get our LA2A open. Same situation. Now compression, gain or peak reduction, as it is called on this one. Yeah, awesome. Acoustic guitar we've already done. Acoustic guitar 2. So let's go and find a good example of some acoustic guitar 2. Yeah, so on this, I don't want to do that super quiet note. That's going to be too quiet really for this round of compression, which is just, again, this is we're thinking of this as our initial compression, our first pass of compression, because compressions, you don't have to use multiple compressors to get a great mix, but my God, it helps. So we're going to start off with this stage of compression, and I think I'm going to go for that one. So we'll pop over to here. All right, let's go and get our compressor out. Business as usual. Peak reduction. Okay, we've done all of our tracks. Now this is going to give us a much more controlled experience when we come to setting our fader volumes and when we come to try to mix. We've already got all this lovely control. Nothing's going to be leaping out in an unpleasant way. But the LA2A style compression, optical compression, is just fantastic for natural control, leaving plenty of dynamics in, so the music will still get big and it will still get small, but it just won't swamp each other. You won't get things jumping wildly out of the mix and then suddenly this has been pushed way back and it all becoming too bassy at a certain point and then it all seems to flop away. All of those kinds of things are what this sort of technique will help prevent. So now let's have a listen to our track. you can see how little all those controls are moving. There's really not too much compression going on, but that's exactly what you want. You just want that tiny little bit of help. Now what we'll do is we will listen to everything on and everything off, because that's where you'll just start to hear that control and that function coming in. And we'll listen to it on the louder section. So here we go. Okay, so when I turned it off, you probably heard that the volume jumps up. And that's exactly what should happen, because we are compressing, we're controlling, so we're bringing down the volume. But also, if you listen, it becomes slightly more undone. The mix just slightly unglues itself. Mixing is small steps. Mixing, yes, there is time and a place for really hammering something. You know, if you're creating very heavy styles of music, metal or heavy rock, there are times and places to really crank a compressor. But also it helps to give that really aggressive compressor a really fantastically shaped signal that you've already spent time on. Getting it so when it hits that compression that you want to really dig into to create those big rock vocals, that the compressor isn't seeing really wildly varying signal level. You still want to get some control, and this is why this is so wonderful for a great start. If you're doing a podcast or just voiceover, you will find that this allows you to naturally talk, and any loud parts of your voice, or if you laugh or something like that, it's just contained. It still sounds natural, but it just focuses the sound. So let's have another listen again with all processing off. Although you can see Console 1 as a plugin on every channel, it's not doing anything. It's transparent. It's just running my control surface down here. So here we go. Particularly that little of the crash, that will be one of those moments which just really helps. That little moment there. All processing off. It just jumps out a little more. So this is just a perfect, really simple, really easy compression to start off with for your tracking and for conditioning your tracks to be able to find a nice balance. And anything really crazy loud that happens later on, it'll just be really controlled. I think towards the end, the guitar got quite loud again, so... Yeah, you can actually see on that section the needles are starting to move a little more, just keeping things contained. All processing off. Again, it's louder but less controlled. It is just a compression technique you can use on absolutely everything. Try it when recording, give it a shot, and see how much better your performers feel like they're performing. Your takes will actually be decided upon based on that little bit of control, because, you know, when you're recording, one of the things that can happen is volume can make you think that something is unpleasant when it's not really, it's just too loud. And so you've got a singer, they're doing their take, they go for the big note, you all listen back to the takes and you all decide there's something wrong with that big note. Maybe it's not even out of tune, but it's irritating, so you go back to the mic and it's back and forth and, oh, why isn't this sounding any good? Try this. ask the singer to record a tiny little bit, tiny little section, get your LA2A, go and find a little moment, just loop it around, set that compression so it's knocking very mildly or maybe even not at all. Use your judgment, have a listen, then listen to that whole verse as an entire thing, and then you should have a really very mixable, very enjoyable sound that is just held together. So I hope you got a lot out of that video, and I would love to hear how you find using this on your mixes. I love it. I use it all the time as a starting off point, and please let me know in the comments if you enjoy using this. Try things. Try digging in a bit harder than I do. Try maybe using it just for peaks alone. It all makes a difference. But if you're unsure about compression, or you've been doing it for ages but just looking for a different perspective, give this a shot. It's really fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day, and I will see you again on another video. Thank you so much.